And welcome to Robin Hood Engineering. I'm Richard Stewart, I'm the Managing Director, and I'm here today to give you information on the Series 3 kit performance. These are all Series 3 bodies which are ready to go out now, and I'm going to go over with you the various final points on the Series 3. We'll give you instructions on how to put the kits together, I'll give you instructions on your vehicle parts, and obviously I'll give you instructions on safety. Safety is very, very important. We have already carefully vetted most people who want to buy Series 3. Most people have been in the showroom and we've spoken to them. I was at the showroom that shows with regards to the abilities that they need, the tools they need, and if we thought that anybody hasn't got the capabilities or hasn't got the common sense to go along with them, then obviously we have to solve them. But I wanted people who slip through the net and manage to send their order forms in by the post, so we haven't seen these people. But we want people to be generally sensible and have a degree of common sense. Now, safety is of the utmost importance, and I am obliged now to relay to you the basics of safety. Now, hopefully many of you out there will be used to working on cars and will be conscious of the danger from petrol, the danger from batteries exploding, the danger from electrical wiring, the danger of cars falling on you when you're underneath them, and everything like that. But throughout the video, I'll be referring to things as a spring to mind, areas where you must be careful with the work. Remember, it's wise to wear safety goggles nearly all the time when you're working on the cars, particularly drilling and definitely grinding. When you're underneath the car, working underneath it, it's always a good idea to wear goggles or spectacles then, just in case anything should fall down into your eyes. If you're going to do any painting at all, there isn't hardly any to do on the Robin Hood. You're using cellulose paints and isocyanate paints. Make sure that you follow the paint manufacturer's instructions. That is not the most important. Make sure all your clothing is tucked in. Make sure you haven't got any ties dangling down. Tuck them into your shirt if necessary. Take them off altogether. If you've got long hair, then get a haircut. Wear one of those little hats everyone's wearing now. These are the ski hats wear those. If you've got a watch, it's got a metal bracelet. Don't wear it at all because that can short out across the battery and really burn your wrist badly. All watches now, all cheap watches have got plastic straps. I've got a cheap watch with a plastic strap. They're the best. Now, these are all Series 3 kits that are going out very shortly. There is lots of differences on the Series 3. Everything is for the better. It's chewing function. We've got lots of points that make the kit easy to work, make it better. You can obviously make it stronger. And also, as you all know, it's also cheaper. On the Series 3 is the fact that this panel here, the scuttle panel, is now made from a heavier gauge material. It's made from 1mm instead of 0.7 as on the earlier cars, and the whole of this component is detachable. There are studs welded onto the body that you undo and you lift the scuttle panel off. This makes it a lot easier for working inside the car when you're working on the wipers, the heater, and of course the wiring. Even the carpet can be offered up and semi-permanently put in before you put the scuttle panel on. The main difference is obviously on the front suspension, and as you'll see that this particular body here has got the components already welded in now, so you see it has the crumple zone front bumper that's welded onto the front. Just at this point now, we do replacement bumpers. If you do have an accident, then we can sell you a part of this that's very easily to replace. You would just cut it off with a hacksaw and sleeve it with some tube and put it back on again. So they're the front crumple zone bumpers necessary for the new regulations, and obviously they will safeguard your nose cone in minor shunts in car parks and things like that. You'll see that the front suspension comes assembled with the steering rack already in, with the traction control arms already in, and with the front wishbones in already. So they're already in. So it means you've got a limited amount of work to do. You've still got to put the shock absorbers in, but they do come complete. You'll see where the scuttle is bolted on with those copper-plated studs. You'll see that this is where the heater goes just here. You will find on some bodies there has been a piece of metal left in across there for strength while you assemble the car, but that little strip comes off. You'll also look inside the engine compartment and you'll see that the engine mountings are already welded into the chassis, and you'll see that they're on sledges that are movable about in the engine bay compartment. Now remember, when you've finished your build, you do have to, or towards the end of the build, you do have to bolt these in quite firmly. But in the early stages and halfway through the build, then you'll leave this so you can move these around until you get the engine in the perfect position. Now, the holes are already pre-cut for the pedals to go through, so I'll cover that later on. Okay, here you see the complete, or almost complete, Series 3 kit on display, with most of the components here. I will go over with you throughout, during this video, any parts which we find could be difficult for you to identify, so that you know exactly what goes where. Now, the Exmo video was quite a success. I was quite surprised. I'm quite amazed at modern technology and the fact that just for a few £100 it gets equipment that enables us to give you an instructional video like this to help you quite a lot. I know that you're going to excuse us for the amateur quality of it, but I'm sure you appreciate that you will have got information from it. Now, it was said that what would help with the Exmo video would be some kind of index. So that if you wanted to fit a component, or you wanted to know what a particular component was, then you would look in the index. Now, we're not doing that, quite simply, because you've got to do this. We're selling you a kit car, we're also selling you a kit video. So the reason we're not doing it is to make you lazy. You've got to do your own index. So it means you've got to sit there and watch the video time and time again, probably 3 or 4 times before you actually embark on doing your car. So basically, you've got to do the index, you've got to go through it, write down all the bits are referred to, look on your timer and put what time it is, and make your own index. The thing is that we do get lots of people ringing up. We're quite happy to answer people's questions, but often the information has already been given them on written form or on the video. So this is important. You're starting now, you've got your notepad, and you're noting down all the points so you can make your own index. Now, the idea is now I will pick up the bits from the kit that you may find difficult to identify, but most parts are self-explanatory. In any event, remember that when you came to collect the kit, there was a tick-off list on the side of the body, and you went through the tick-off list, marking the parts off. So most sincerely, I hope you managed to recognise everything. So if there's anything you're not sure about, then you could tell us on the day. We'd make sure you had got it. So as we look at the kit content, there's several bits we're particularly proud of. The new performance manifold is a really nice piece of work. It's, though we sell the cheapest kit in the world, we think it's the best manifold in the world. It's manufactured with tubes which are all exactly the same length. I think they're all 32 inches long to the nearest 3 mil. It's got terrific gas flow, and it's a true 4-into-1 manifold. We've changed the size of the hole in the body. We have got a nice square hole now. It's more square than rounded corners, and the manifold goes through like that. It does give you quite a lot of movement. There is a difference in height in the 16 and the 2-litre engine, so there's a bit of tolerance there. In any event, it would be an order just to trim the hole a little bit to get it to fit correctly. On the same theme, we've got the new silencer. We've asked our manufacturers to make this silencer quieter so it complies with the SVA regulations. So this is a new quieter silencer, and you can see we've had the end turned over nicely, so it's got a nicely formed rounded end, so you won't catch yourself on it. Now, this is pretty straightforward to fit, and we can actually show you how to fit it later on. Remember that we don't give you those rubber bobbins there. You've still got the one of the few things you've got to buy yourself, and recommended that you fit Rover SD1 gearbox mountings. So I'm going to show you those later on. There's no need to cut the end of the pipe now because it comes to the exact right position outside the car. Also in the kit, you do get this new prop shaft, complete new prop shaft with grease nipples both ends, and it is a 35mm diameter outer sleeve. If you find that yours is a smaller one, then you can exchange it on the day without any problem, but if you get home and find it's wrong, then we will make a charge for swapping it later on. I have a Series 3 body which is tipped upside down, and one of the first jobs you've got to do on your Robin Hood is to seal off all the seams on it. Now, we've got the car upside down now, so it's quite easy to do the underneath, so that's possibly one of the things you could do first. Now, very simply, make sure you wipe all the sludge off it. You'll see there's some sludge on it. Wipe all that off it initially, and then you'll get your masking tape, and you'll put tram lines of masking tape over all these joints like that. Leave it with tails on, so that it's easy to get off afterwards. So I'll just make a start, and I'll just show you what we intend to do. So we've got those like that, and we've got that tape like that. It is just coincidental that we've got it like a set. Flex sealer here, but any silicone sealer will do. For the cosmetic bits on the body, then you could do with a better quality one, but for the parts underneath where you're just looking to keep the moisture out, then an ordinary silicone sealer that you'll get from a DIY place will be adequate. So we've got it like that. We've put a nice bead of sealer on that like that. Now be careful with this sealer because it does tend to get everywhere. So we've got a bead of sealer there. Then you really want some of those gloves that you get at filling stations for diesel. So with those gloves you put those on and you're smoothing that out along there like that. Carl, can you just quickly nip into the office and get an old newspaper, please? So we're smoothing that out. They're just underneath the kettle. So that goes on there like that. You're smoothing that out over there like that. And you're trying to get it as smooth as possible. Now try not to get this black sealer on yourself because it does tend to make a mess. Thank you. And then all the tape that you take off and all the, if you put it on a piece of newspaper like that. So we're leaving tails on this so that it comes off easily. If you make a job and make it too good and stick it down, then you can't get it off. But it's important that you take this off while it's wet like that. And that leaves quite a neat line there like that, and it's sealing the welds off. Now, although the stainless steel is stainless steel, the body is stainless steel, and the welding wire is stainless steel, when we weld it, the actual heat from the welding process does destroy the stainless qualities of that particular part of the car, and it will discolour and it will go rusty. It won't go that rusty that it will perforate, but it will go rusty. That's why it's important that you seal it off like that. Now we move over to this other example here, and you can see that all the sealing's been done underneath this car, and it's all been done quite neatly, so that, and it's gone off cured really well. So that will keep all the moisture out. You see we've also sealed along there, and even around that mounting there for the seatbelt brackets. Now, as you look at this car, don't be confused because this is actually a V8 car. It's a V8 prototype we're building now. So there are several differences, but we've got it upside down now just to show you the Sikaflex in. We turn these bodies over. There's just one point I'd like to relay to you with regards to the track control arms. These are the track control arms that we fit into the car. Now, I will go over at length about the adjustment in the suspension and how it's possible to alter the caster and camber of the suspension. But basically, the track control arms are rubber mounted, and when you put your anti-roll bar in, then you do need for these to be in a natural position. So this is a natural position like that. You can adjust it to be forward or backward like that. The rubber is quite forgiving. But for the application that you're doing now, then you do need to have them in a neutral position. Now we move over to the chassis across here, and this has got the anti-roll bar already in it, and you can see that we've got, that's the original anti-roll bar from the donor vehicle, and you can see that that is laying on there like that, and these are obviously the natural position. So it is important when you do take the components off your donor vehicle that you make a note where that rubber goes with the omega shaped bracket, because you do need to put the rubber back in the same position, and usually you can see where it's been because it's shining underneath it. So they're the omega shaped brackets that go round there, and that will bolt onto the car. So what is important is that when you actually put that bracket on, you can see now that you have got these in the natural position like that. But it is important before you drill them that you do measure precisely wherever you put them. You measure from that centre of the burst hole to the outside of the body, to the front of the body, sorry, and you make sure that they're both the same. And again, make sure they're the same from the outside. Now, all of you will quickly realise that when you come to alter the geometry of the suspension, if you alter it outside the limitations that there are in its natural form, you can get more or less caster by moving that like that. So remember that it is possible to move that. If you wish to get more or less caster, then you can move that like that. But whatever happens, make sure that you move it equally on both sides. The other point that I'd like to make while the body's upside down is just to come back to this chassis across here, and you'll see that there's a cutout in the floor for the 5-speed gearbox. So if you fit in a 5-speed gearbox, then you'll cut that out and you will trim that off as well. The next thing we're going to cover on this video is fitting the rear axle. While this body's upside down, I want to draw your attention to two lots of holes. These holes here are about the size of a old 2-shilling piece. You see there's one each side, and the other holes are the holes. These are already in your body when you get it, and the other holes are the 4 holes that's inside that that channel section there. You do have to drill those holes, and I will explain exactly what those holes do just there. This is the rear subframe from Ford Sierra Saloon. Now it is ready now to go into the donor vehicle. You'll see that we've already fitted our coilover shock absorbers to the rear of it, and these go onto the same place as the standard Ford Sierra units went. Now, in addition, you'll see that we've trimmed off these front rubber mountings. The little bit of tube that comes through that mounting is longer than that, and we've trimmed it down to be about a 3/8 of an inch high. We've also taken out these bolts and put them in the other way around on the outer part of the trailing arms. We've also cut off the bracket for the exhaust that it was on just there. And we've checked the axle to make sure that it is in sound condition. Now, to do this, the main thing that you're looking for is to ensure that the drive shafts are in good condition. Hopefully you'll have driven in the vehicle prior to taking it to bits, and you've listened for noises coming from the drive shafts or coming from the diff, and hopefully it was quiet. Check the gaiters, that there aren't any splits in the gaiters, that there isn't any oil or grease coming from them. If you feel the gaiters, you'll feel whether there are any little bits of metal or any bearings are loose in there. If there is, then obviously then the drive shaft will need replacing. You need to check the condition of the void bushers in the trailing arms. To do this, just put a pry bar, a crowbar, or even a gigantic screwdriver into there, and as you do on the MOT, just prise that and you'll see if there's any wear in those at all. If there is, then you do need to replace them. You will have to just check the condition of this rear mounting. The rear diff mounting is a rubber mounting, and we usually find that that's okay. Obviously I won't cover the brakes, but you will be checking the brakes as well at that point. And you'll be looking also for leaks in the diff. You'll see that the operator who stripped this vehicle down has very cleverly put these prop shaft bolts back in there. They are a fine metric thread. You definitely won't find those in your nut and bolt box, so make sure you put those back in. This has got the original handbrake cable on. I understand it was okay, so the person that's building this car chose not to replace it, but they are inexpensive, particularly from accessory shops. Non-genuine ones are very, very cheap. This is a late era rear axle, and there are little fins on those rubber mountings. We cut those fins off with a hacksaw blade. The condition of these mountings isn't that important. They are no longer used for as a rubber mounting. They are used for location only. So even if they're a little bit worn, not very clever, don't worry about them. If you want to save money, don't put them back in. Even if this tube sometimes comes unbonded and you can pull it out, even if that's come out, don't worry, put it back in, put some Sikaplex on it, and that's okay, because you are going to fix this axle in differently. Right, that basically covers the axle. Again, we'll just refer to the 4 holes here. Remember, you need to remember those holes because they're important. You also need to view in your mind this plate just here. Now basically I will tip the axle upside down because you will see that there is an area underneath that you need to insert a bolt through or a locking nut. So I'll just tip it upside down now. I will tip it back again quickly because there is a breather just there, and the oil comes out of the diff if you leave it upside down. It's worth remembering. Also, remember, this is about the only time in its life that possibly you've got the opportunity to change the oil in the diff, or the minimum to check it. So that's something you could do. So we'll just turn that over now. So we can look at the underneath. Now that's turned over, and we can see now the condition of it underneath. Now, there will be a hole that you'll be drilling, and it will come through that triangular web like that. So there will be a hole that will come through that just there. So if you just bear that in and put this axle in position. Just want to draw your attention to a couple of points. First of all, the shock absorbers have been fitted, as we said, in the original position. They've gone in with the bolts supplied with the spacers to space that out equally. That's the same both sides. Remember these 4 holes here that are in the back of that diff mounting. And also, look now that we've taken out these bolts that go through the outer lower wishbone. So we've taken those out altogether now. Now the reason I say that is it's important to get those out. In some cases, some people have ground away part of the body for those to go through. That's not a good idea. In fact, you do need to grind a little bit on this subframe, which I'll just cover in a second, but the hole that goes through in the body has got carefully rounded corners to stop any cracking, so it's important that you don't grind that hole away at all. So in this instance, if we can just zoom in, cameraman, you'll see there are slight webs on that subframe. We grind that web away from there. It doesn't do very much, so take that web away, if necessary a little bit on the other side. To recap, we've cut those down to 3/8. Those little bits of tube will in fact stick through the body, protrude through the body. We've got ready, we have the bolts that go through, the actual mountings I've just referred to. We've got the strengthening plates. That's a bolt we've taken out the wishbone at that stage. Just here we've got 4 bolt washers that go through the back here, which I'll cover in a second. They go through there, right, and then on this side of the car we've got the strengthening plates again. Obviously you do get these in the kit, strengthening plates and the large 12mm bolt and nut and washer. So we're now going to wheel this lot forward. Carl, if you just give me a hand. We're going to wheel this forward, and we're looking to get that sawn off little tube just there through, or at least lined up with that hole in the body just there, okay? Remember, the person that has done this car has made a little bit of they've cheated a bit, they've ground some bits off here. I wouldn't want to see those ground at all. I want to see those left as they are. And anything you want to make the job easier, grind it from the subframe. So we're going to carefully wheel this in. Remember again, we've got these wheels on the axle that are a true pair of wheels. I'll wheel it in carefully. It's on that trolley jack, it's going in as square as we can. We keep going like that, it goes underneath. That's great, keep going, you're on a winning streak. Keep going, so you're looking to get those we're looking to get those little tubes in line with the holes in the body. So we're almost there, are we, Carl? Yes. I can see mine. So we're going to lift them up now. I've got a block of wood here I'm going to use just to support it. It's going to go up like that. But they are in line. Mine's is coming up great. So that's almost in line. Block of wood underneath just to support it, to give us a little bit of a rest. Is yours there, Carl? Yes. Good. Right, so we're going to put that in, top. And now, without the strengthening plates, but with two washers, we're getting the 12mm bolt with a washer underneath, and we're putting that underneath like that, and through the hole like that. And then we do want to get that tube through, but at this stage we're quite happy just to put the washer on and the nut like that. Okay? Right, I'll just go around there and help Carl with his. So we've got that. You ready, Carl? That's all right. I'll hold it up and you just pop it through. So we're going to get that there. And you're now putting yours through. You're going to put the washer on and the nut. That's great. Okay, that's there. Now you see that we're really trying to get those little tubes through the holes, but it's difficult because we haven't got the axle in square. So we're now going to just, cameraman, can we just have it at the back here? We're going to jack this dip up now. If you can see, we've got the rear mounting just there, and that's the floor. We want it to go up to the floor. So we're jacking it up now, like that, and it's going up quite well. It's going right up, and you'll know when it's almost there because the body will just start to rise. So we've got that in position now. Now we're going to go back now to those mountings that we've temporarily put those bolts in, and we're going to just leave one side bolted and undo the other side and take the bolt out. And I've got a block of wood here which it's going to help me because I'm going to put the block of wood underneath there, and that's going to help me actually get that to come off. So we're looking now to get that tube. You can just see it just there. We're going to get that tube through the hole. Now remember that tube is on a rubber mounting, so you can see that it's quite easy. It's just coming through the hole nicely now. So we're successful now. That tube is just coming through that hole. So we'll just give that block a bit of a kick underneath to get it underneath a bit more. You can actually use a small scissor jack for this, or if you're fortunate and you've got two small jacks, that would help you a little bit. So we've got that like that, and that's just coming through the hole nicely. So what we'll do now, we can make a start now and put the strengthening plate on. Don't get these mixed up, they're left and right handed. You can see they've been cut by the profile cutter and they're quite accurate. So sometime you do need just to relieve that hole there a little bit, just by filing it out or just adjusting it. So we're now going to put that like that, and we can already see that that tube is lining up with that just there. That's super. So we've got the nut and bolt now. We've taken out, we're putting it back in again now. Through there. Oh, could you get me a 12mm spanner? So we know now that if we pull that up tight, that little tube, Carl, it should be here already. We should have got it ready or to do this job. It's here somewhere. So we've now going to put that nut and bolt through, and you can see that that tube, can you get closer, cameraman? You can see that that's gasping to come up through that hole. So when we tighten up tight, that tube will come up flat against that washer and sandwich it all in. Now I'm tightening that up like that, okay? Now you're going to pull that up as tight as it'll go. In fact, it will come to a stop because you will come to the end. That's right, that's come up tight now. That's good. So we're now looking, we'll take the faithful bit of wood out, go around the other side, and we're doing the same with the other side. We're going to pop the wood in to support it, like that. Okay, we're taking the bolt out again. And again, Carl, pass me that green screwdriver. You can see that's wanting to come through the hole, thank you. So that is more or less in line, ready to come through. We'll just see if we can just get a little bit of a pull, reposition it slightly. Yes, that's beautiful. That's going to come up through there, great. So we can now put the, I'm just wheeling the wheel a little bit. Can you see, cameraman? I'm wheeling the wheel, that just lines that up nicely. So we'll put the strengthening plate again on there like that. Strengthening plate goes on there like that, and that bolt goes from the underside. Like so, on there. And that will pull it up. Now, remember, Richard, thank you. Remember that that little tube must protrude through the actual floor. And when you have this a little bit more complete, then it is necessary to take the plate off just to make sure that that has actually gone through. So that's now being tightened up, and that has fixed the front edge of the subframe. The next thing to do is to put back these two bolts that we've taken out. Now, this is often a little bit difficult, but what you really need is what's known as a podger. Now, those of you who are used to steel erecting and that kind of thing will know what a podger is, and it can be very, very useful. So we're now going to put these blue bolts back in. If you've got any old bolts, then it's a good idea if you can just grind the front off, and that will, in actual fact, assist you quite a lot. You can grind the front edge down. That will assist you to get the bolt in. You can use it as like a sharp punch. But you've got to line the holes up, and then the bolt then goes in like that. Both these bolts started with the aid of this blunt centre punch. That does help a lot. So we've got them started, and then we'll just tap these into the holes like that, so that they come out the other side. And then you'll need to put a nut on them on the other side when they're in. So we've now got the front of the axle very roughly held in position, and we now move towards the back of the axle. Now, the back of the axle, we're now going to get the trolley jack. Carl, can you jack the trolley jack up and just ensure that the mounting is against the floor? Yes. Right, the mounting is now against the floor. What happens now is, just jack it a little bit higher, please. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going, go on. Keep going. Right, keep going. Now we now need to take these blocks of wood away so that we can rest the blocks of wood that are supporting the body. We take those away so that the axle, the body can come down into its natural position. So we'll just move those shock absorbers out of the way a little bit like that. And we're going to let this down so that the body comes down to its natural position, and we're looking for the drive shafts to be more or less straight. Right, so there's nothing on the jack at all now. So that's that. That'd be a good idea just to see that it's a good idea if we just pop this block of wood. Carl, can you just pop the front, please? Lift the body up at the front. Just pop that block of wood underneath the front like that. Okay? So now we've got the body in its natural position. In actual fact, we're cheating a little bit because the shock absorbers are actually on the support bars. But we'll just leave them like that at the moment because that's in order. What happens now is that with the jack underneath the diff, and we've got the actual mounting pressed up against the floor, what we need to do now is to lean underneath with our Black & Decker drill and to drill the holes in the boot floor. They are actually, in actual fact, already been drilled, but we've got to pretend. We've got to drill the holes in the boot floor where the mounting goes. But before we do that, we must measure accurately from the wheel to the side of the body. So that's the distance between the edge of the wheel to the side of the body. You've got to get in there with a tape, or better still with some calipers, and you've got to measure that accurately, both sides, to ensure that the axle is in the middle of the body. And you'll see now why it's important that we actually had wheels that were the correct wheels. Imagine if you've got one wheel from a Ford Cortina and one off an Escort, you've got them on the back and you're trying to get this square, you've got no chance. So the wheels must both be the same. So with the axle now in the middle of the body, we've drilled underneath with an 1/8 pilot drill, and we've drilled through the holes in the mounting. So we've got 4 pilot holes in the top. You've got to imagine 4 small holes, and then we're going to drill through the top, going downwards with a 3/8 or a 10mm drill in order to go through the mounting. So as we've done this before, obviously it's quite easy. The holes are already there, and all we're going to do now is bolt it up. So we've got the bolts now. We've got the 10mm bolts. They should go in there quite easily, like that, through there. Right, so they all need to be tightened up now. We now come to the rear shock absorbers. If you come around here, cameraman, you'll see that we have these angle sections that you do get in your kit. Now these are 2-inch These are 2-inch angle sections like this, and it is a good idea to drill a number of holes in them. You do need to drill the fixing holes where they bolt onto the top of the body, and you do need to drill the one hole that is directly above the shock absorber fixing on the trailing arms. But if you was to go on and drill some more holes there and there, or there possibly, it would mean then that you would get an adjustable softness on your shock absorber, that by moving your shock absorber back so it was working at a less vertical angle, it would mean then you could soften the ride. So that is something you can think about before you do this. While you've got this in your vise, you could drill some more holes in it. But you can see that we've now, to get the job going, we've drilled 2 holes, and we've got a couple of 10mm by 25mm bolts coming up from the body at the side. Remember, there is a natural curvature in the side of the body, and that matches up with the curvature that is in those angles. And you see it does fit quite precisely. So now we're going to put those angles, put the shock absorbers onto the angles. Carl, could you just come and lift the body up at the back a little bit? Now your shock absorber comes just get hold of the body and then really strong, just hang steady now. Lift, that's good. So let it down. So you can see your shock absorber comes pre-assembled, and there is a couple of locking nuts in actual fact. There's a washer, and then there is the rubber bush. So what actually happens is then that you just lift it again, that you'll put the rubber bush there, a bit higher, that goes on there like that. Down you go, and then the rubber bush goes on top, and then the washer goes on, and then the nut goes on there like that, and then the nut goes on like that. So that will pull down now, and the locking nut will go on there. So okay, just for this body we're working on now, I just want you to remember again that it is a V8 prototype we're building, so there's certain things that are slightly different. But the back end is the same. You'll see that these strengthening plates are in position now, and you'll also see that we've got the pins through the lower wishbones. You'll see there is a hole in the plate which is just there. It is necessary now with a large 1/2-inch drill to drill through that hole. So you're going to go through the hole, through the floor of the car, and into the top of the subframe and out of the bottom of the subframe. That will in fact securely fix the subframe to the body. Now also you need to put a circumference of bolts around that plate as well to hold that plate in position. Just be careful, you can see there is a line of weld across there, so that hole I've just drawn just there really wants to be moved that way a little bit. So that will be there to miss that actual web on the inside. So we're just going to move now to a car we've got at a further stage of completion, and you'll see exactly how those bolts and that main bolt will be. This car has already got some trim in it, so it's difficult to actually see, but you can see there that we've got the bolt, the original bolt that goes through the centre of the mounting, we've got that just there, and then we've got the additional bolt I've just referred to, the one that you've drilled, you've got it just there. So in this case we've chosen to put the bolts up from underneath, and then put washers on, and then cut off the surplus thread from the top. So you can see those just there. You can also see the bolts that go round there with a circumference of bolts that go around that plate to hold the plate in position. Now, when you've drilled, as I indicated earlier, through that plate and through the floor and then into the top of the subframe, you'll then drill out through the bottom of the subframe. We'll now go outside to another subframe outside, and I can just show you in detail exactly what happens when you drill through the bottom. You ready?
Yep.
This subframe here is in fact an estate subframe, which I'll point out that to you in a second. But basically, when you've drilled through the hole in that top plate I've indicated, you'll be drilling through the web just there, and there'll be a hole just there like that, and you'll go through that, through the top of that, and that is a hollow box section, and you'll come out, just watch your feet, you'll come out through the bottom just here, out of that box section. You'll come through there. You do need to make that hole bigger so you can get your bolt up through there into that hollow box section. Obviously, if you just put your washer on the outside of that, it would crush that box section. So that is important, that you make that hole bigger and the bolt or the nut goes into that void. Just to continue, you'll see, as I said to you, this is an estate rear axle, and you can see that on an estate the shock absorber goes through the centre of the coil. That isn't the problem. The difference being that that is stronger and more substantial than on the saloon. The easiest solution to it is to actually purchase new arms from a saloon. That's the simplest thing. But you can use these if you wish. If you wish to use these, it means you've got to cut a little bit of the rear body away to accommodate those. In addition, there aren't any brackets here for the shock absorbers, so it would mean you'd have to make some brackets for the back. So you've got to judge your own capabilities, and you've got to decide whether or not you're in a position to do that work or not. But often it's easier to go to the breaker's yard and get some arms from the breaker's yard. That yours will come in. Now there is still the front crumple zone bumper to be put on this, but that we've left that off because it is the V8 for a particular reason. Now you'll see that the wishbones come already fixed to your car, as does the lower track control arms, as does the rack. We've already put the shock absorbers on this, and we've already put the anti-roll bar. Remember, when you fit the anti-roll bar to put in the new rubber bush kit we've supplied. And you'll put the anti-roll bar into one side first, then you'll disconnect the track control arm from the other side, put the track control arm onto the anti-roll bar, and then put the track control arm onto the car. And then I've already detailed earlier on in the video how to fix the Amiga-shaped brackets underneath. With that together like that, you'll see that we've also put in these dummy McPherson struts. They go to the end of the steering onto the top of the suspension joint. It is important that you do get them the right way around. If it's possible for you just to zoom in, you can see, cameraman, can you zoom in please? You can see that the taper must taper downwards. So there's no taper at the top, and the wide taper is on the outside. You'll see that the centre bushing there is welded in at an angle. Make a note of that, that's quite important, so that when the pin from that top suspension arm is in, you'll see that it goes straight through the centre of that bush. But that is common sense. Now, we're going to, for this exercise, just put the whole of this assembly onto your Robin Hood just as it came off the donor vehicle. You've still obviously got to check everything like the wheel bearings, the calipers, and of course you do get a new disc in the deal, so you will obviously fit a new disc. But for today, so we can move on, we're going to just put it on as it is. We've undone this bolt here. Remember that when you do come to dismantle this from the Ford Sierra, it's important you don't snap that bolt off. And you will find if you give that a good beating all the way around that and put some penetration oil on it, hitting that bolt square on like that to loosen it, some penetration oil, and you'll find that you can get it out quite easily. If you should be unfortunate that it does snap off, don't worry unduly, because you can at the death drill it out and put an ordinary knot bolt through it. So we come to assemble this, it's quite straightforward. So all that's going to happen is we're going to just pop that stub axle onto that lower suspension joint like that, and we'll obviously tighten that nut up like that, and then you just need to spread apart that that pinch plate. So we put something in there, a little wedge, a small chisel, or in this case we put a punch in, and then that means then we've just spread that apart, and we can just carefully slide that on like that until it's right up to the thing like that, and then we take that out, and then with a spanner, with a 19mm spanner I think it is, we're going to tighten that up. Now you can adjust the suspension a little bit to alter your ride height by sliding that down in that like that. But for this exercise today, we'll just have it at the very top there, and we'll tighten that up. We'll tighten it up till it's very, very tight like that. Okay, and then obviously the bottom one, we're going to tighten that up as well. If it does turn round, if the ball joint spins in its socket, then it's just a matter of placing a little bit of pressure underneath, usually a small trolley jack underneath that, so that that tapered pin locks tight into the sleeve and it won't turn then. So we're going to tighten those up, and you'll find that your front suspension does go together very quickly. Most of the time taking up on your front suspension is actually taken up by preparation, cleaning the donor vehicle parts, and even in this case that lower drop forging, that lower track control arm that you do get new in the kit, we've chosen to grind it up with a soft disc grinder to take the casting marks or the forging marks off it, so it looks a bit neater, so when we do paint it, it will look quite good. So we've got that on there like that. All it leaves is just to put the track rod end on, which is straightforward, which I'll do after I've just talked to you about adjustment. You'll see that this suspension is quite refined, and it's probably the best that Robin Hood produced yet from the early days of the Cortina base cars with Cortina subframes. We still see those now and again. But no, this is quite advanced now, and it does not only look good, but it also handles quite well. And this is due to the fact that there is endless amounts of adjustment to it. Now basically, you can see that for the straightforward adjustment of your toe-in, so to adjust the toe-in on the vehicle, it's easy, you all know, you just undo that locking nut and turn that track rod end in and out. That'll give you the desired amount. Normally on a Robin Hood the toe-in is only around about half a degree, that's all that's required. So that goes onto there after you've adjusted that, and that's pretty straightforward, not difficult to do. Now the actual camber is adjustable on that ball joint just there. So you'll undo that lock nut, and that will screw in and out of that top wishbone, so you can get the correct amount of camber for your wheels. Now we're recommending for a Robin Hood that you want a little bit of negative camber on the wheels. Now the exact amount I will show you in a few minutes exactly how to do it, how to get it spot on. That covers the camber. Now the caster is really fixed, and we really wouldn't want you to mess about with that, because we feel we've got it set at the right amount. So if you could just come round here, cameraman, you'll see the top wishbone here goes in between these two. Could you come behind me, please? Goes in between these two members, and there are it's usually an equal amount of nylon washers. In this case, there is 4 either side of this top wishbone. Now, what it means is that we've set this up at what we consider the right amount of negative caster. So, if you wanted to increase your caster, then you would move the washers from the front, from the back to the front. I'm sorry, if you wanted to increase the caster, then you take the washers from the back and put them on the front. Again, I did say earlier that if you did require more than the amount that we're recommending, supposing you've got very, very big tyres, which we wouldn't recommend, and you got a lot of drag and you found your car wasn't self-centering, then it would be in order then, as we described, just here, before you clamp that omega-shaped clamp on, to move it backwards, to move it forwards, to bring that forward, as I've indicated there. That would bring that forward, and it would give you more of a slope on this imaginary kingpin that goes down, and that would give you more caster. But normally, if you have that in the middle and set that as described, that will give you the correct amount. That basically covers the adjustment of the front suspension, which is sold very well on Exmo 1. You'll see it's a very easy to fit rollover bar, as there is holes already in the body and in the 2 luggage compartment infill panels. The roll bar is simply pushed through those holes that's already in the body. It goes downwards towards the floor of the luggage compartment area and is held in place by 2 U-bolts that go through the side of the body. When you fit your roll bar, make sure, cameraman, make sure that the U-bolts go through the angle section at the side and bolt it firmly to it. The other supplementary U-bolts go down the bottom and go through the side of the luggage compartment floor and through the side of the body. It all adds to the strength. And then obviously at the back of the car it bolts on to the holes that are already in the back of the body through the bracing stays. We would say that it may be advantageous if you was planning on rolling your car over, that underneath the bottom of the roll bar foot that you placed a additional piece of heavy gauge material, so that in the event of you rolling over, it didn't pierce the floor. In any event, those of you who haven't got our own shock absorbers, will find that the spring seat goes under there to supplement the strength of it. You may find that the rollover bar is a little too long. You may need to trim a small amount off the bottom, say half an inch, in order to get it so that it's vertical. The other finer points of the roll bar is that if you haven't ordered harnesses, you will find your roll bar comes with two nuts welded on to pick up the seat belt, the inertia reel seat belt fastening that goes above your shoulder. The rollover bar is intended to be rubbed down, primed with a bare metal primer, and then painted preferably in a matte or satin black, or a colour to suit yourself. Tied in the countryside is like collecting old milk crates lying on the side of the road. We're going now to use these to put underneath the car to bring the car at the required level. Remember, these milk crates are only suitable in these early stages while there isn't any weight. Once you've got any weight involved, then obviously you've got to use proper stands. So if you could just lift the body up for me, I'll pop these on the floor plan. Right, okay. So it's just been pointed out that we need to go quite well inside to clear the legs of the crane. So that's that. Okay, to look at the engine and gearbox on the crane, it's a standard type, inexpensive mechanical wind-up crane. We've used a piece of stout rope there for the engine. We've used the existing engine lift bolts. Engine crane. The wheels we've got access to underneath the vehicle. We're going backwards, and as we get into the engine bay, we're actually going to force the gearbox down to point it down. The crane operator is going backwards with the crane still, and the gearbox is going into the tunnel. Could you lift it a little bit higher, operator, please? We're going backward, forcing it in. Now we're going down now. You can see the shape of the foot cross member lends itself perfectly to the engine and gearbox going in one unit like this. Steady. It's just touching now. We need to go backwards. Keep going. That's right. That's nicely. We're now going to just clear the cutout in the sump. There we go. It's going down there. David's at the back pushing it down. Okay, remember to watch your fingers in this operation. Further back and under. Yes, that's great. Go on now. Remember, the stainless steel cars lend itself perfectly for this kind of roughish work. Whereas if you've got a painted car, you would have to be quite careful. We've just got it in nicely. It's just missing the front engine pulley. We've removed the fan so that we've got more clearance going down. And nicely tucking in there. So we need to go back now, down lower, Robert. Down lower. And back.
Before we go back, it might be an idea to push the prop shaft onto the splines on the gearbox.
Right.
So just bring it forward slightly so like this.
So
No, backwards, sorry.
Through the hole for the gear stick, cameraman, you can see that we are now offering up the prop shaft onto the spline of the gearbox. Could you lift the back of the prop shaft up, David? And Robert, could you push down the back of the gearbox for me? No, that's perfect. That's great. It's gone in. It's so easy when you've got the right prop shaft. You're not trying to fit a 27mm shaft into the 35 hole gearbox. You can see through the transmission stick hole. There it is in there. So we're now in position now to, I won't bother putting the stick in that. So we're now going to put the engine onto these engine mounts. The engine needs to come a lot further back now.
We also need to watch the gearbox mount. Okay, David underneath, try to locate the gearbox in the hole. Yes, we're lining up nicely. How are you doing under there, David? Well, further back.
And your
Yeah.
jacket there.
Right, could you just lift the engine down a little bit? Yeah, that's perfect. Now we can just yes, we've got that one in there.
Right, just put it on.
Yeah, if you think. David, can you wind the crane down?
Okay, that's in.
Tap. That's it, that's gone in. Complete the last stage of the engine fitting sequence. So with a small jack, we've now got to remove these milk crates and substitute them with profit stands. So we're going to jack the body up in order to put the stand in the engine bay. The next thing is to fit the gear stick. Straightforward. That goes through the hole in the body, and there is ample room to get the 4 torque drive, the 3 torque drive bolts into the top of the gearbox. The Ford Sierra gearboxes are a lot better than the old type Cortina ones, where you had to screw a horrible nylon nut into the top of the gearbox. The 3-bolt fixing makes it a lot simpler. Gear stick in the hole, just ensure that it does clear the stick nicely. If necessary, you will have to trim away a small area from the gear stick hole. Okay, now it's a manifold. David, can you get the manifold? And can you fit the manifold on? Note at this stage we haven't fitted the engine bay floor panels in correctly yet. We're only going to try these components in to make sure they fit. So in we go with the manifold. Remember that these flanges are mild steel, and they will go rusty if you don't paint them. Make sure also that you fit the manifold with the studs on the engine. You'll have a job to line it up otherwise. So make sure the studs are on the engine, and you just may have to force it on slightly, that the manifolds are well made and they always fit okay. Don't forget the gaskets. You do need gaskets there. So that's the pedals all go in without modification. We start off with the servo mounting panel supplied by us. You'll see that's a substantial 3mm thick mild steel panel with various cutouts in it and holes. You recognise the holes in the front faces, those being the same as that in the Ford Sierra. This is what the main servo goes into. There is cutouts in the body that correspond with the cutouts in the servo mounting panel, and if you want to take advantage of all the leg room there is in the Robin Hood, you'll be fitting this panel, the servo mounting panel, as far forward as possible, and you'll line it up with the holes that there is already in the body. So that will mean that they're just on the front corner of the firewall tray, and it's picking up on the side of the box section. There are 2 holes at the side, that just picks up on the box section nicely, and the holes, there's one in front of the accelerator pedal and one by the clutch pedal. With that in position, you can temporarily grip it in with a small pair of grips. We've bent up the hole that there is for the accelerator pedal, so we grip that in position now like that, and we'll just try now the other components in to see if they fit. We've got the servo here. You recognise the servo. There is a bump stop on there, and there's a taper that goes into the hole in the back of the brake pedal. The brake pedal has got this automatic, the clutch pedal has got the automatic adjuster on it. Make sure you replace that if it's worn. Also, it's bad to see any kind of car with worn pedal rubbers. They're inexpensive. When the pedal rubbers are worn, put new pedal rubbers. Good idea to wobble it down, freshen it up with an aerosol, black aerosol, looks a lot neater down there. So that now goes in through the holes, winds its way in. We're putting these in unmodified, you wanted to get more pedal room, therefore you could crank the pedals a little bit. So the servo now goes in, we're locating that pointed spigot in the back of the pedal. That bolts up there, and Robert's jetting in now with the bolts that came off it. Remember, when you take your donor vehicle to bits, if you put these bolts on there, you don't lose them. So we've got this assembly in position now. I'll put it on. It looks as though it's a difficult one, this is. Yeah, it's nearly on. That's it, that's on now. I shan't tie it up yet. So that's in position like that. We've got it temporary holding with a pair of grips. I could just show you the accelerator pedal just here. We've bent up the tag on this side. Can we see that, cameraman? We've bent up that tag. It depends where you bend it up. It depends on where you put your pedal. Remember, when you sat in the car, you set in your car like this. You've got size 10 feet, as nearly everybody has, that the pedal must fall exactly in the ball of your foot there. So when you're mounting your pedal, particularly accelerator pedal, make sure it's comfortable, make sure it is that 8 inches off the floor, like that. So we come with the pedal now, through that hole like that, and you will have to make some bracketry to bring that pedal in the right position. So that is left for you to do, to extend the bracket that's already there, put some bracketry so that it's in the right position, and then you'll bring your cable through there, through the little hole, out to your carburetor. This is the servo mounting panel that is specially designed for the new Series 3. It is different to the example you've just seen, in so much it's a slightly different shape, and it has got quite a large hole through the bottom. That hole is quite important because you do need to feed the wiring loom to the front of the car through this hole. So just the same as before, this goes on top of the, could you come around here? This goes on top of the bulkhead panel, and the squares line up. But you must just move it sufficiently towards the outside of the car so you can drill through those 2 holes that's by the wiring loom hole in order to get a couple of 8mm bolts through there and into this box section that you'll fit some substantial washers on the outside. So that's going to bolt onto there just like that, and the same with the other holes that we've indicated. You may also need to slightly have to trim the top off it. You may need just to take a little bit off the top to get the pedal cover to fit. So we now have a pedal box cover that is now a new one-piece instead of a 3-piece pedal box cover. It's stronger, it's made from a thicker material, and that then goes over the top like that. Once you've got all your pedals in and everything in there is to go there, and you've finally got your bulkhead, your scuttle panel in, then that goes over the top like that, and it then bolts in around the circumference of it, obviously through the front there, and then through into that. It bolts all in solid, and it makes the pedals quite secure and quite solid. This component you see here is again special to the Series 3. It is the steering column support bar. It's manufactured so that when it goes in, you're able to adjust your column in and out and up and down to suit you. There is a cutout in the dashboard so you can get the column quite high. If we look at this car here that's part built, you can see that it's in position, and the builder has chosen to have his column relatively low down. You could see if he wished, if we come around this side, cameraman, you could see if he wished, he could raise that up a lot higher. Obviously it can go backward and forward by just moving it along the side. You've got to bolt it in yourself onto the side member and onto the tunnel. So you see it all comes pre-drilled, and it's quite easy to fit. Just remember before you fit it, all these sharp corners, to round those off. It's important that there aren't any sharp corners. So you can see that the steering column, quite simply, in a complete unit, bolts onto that using some 12mm bolts. That makes it quite solid. It then goes through the, remember again, this is a V8, it's slightly different. This is a prototype, we're doing some work. It goes through there and then exits out into the engine compartment.
The car you've just been looking at, as you notice, it hadn't got a scuttle on. This is the scuttle that we've decided to take off it, so you can see exactly how it operates. Now, it has got all the apertures pre-cut in it, as you can see. It's got the speedometer for the speedometer cluster, and it's got the 5 holes for the 5 instruments. It's also got a hole in for the heater, and one for the heater blower, and one for an auxiliary switch. Now, I must confess that this was designed some time ago, and it may be that these holes here, particularly for the heater operation switch just there, and the heat controls, it may be that you may decide to fit them in a slightly different position. If that's the case, then you would have to blank this off. It's also quite adventurously got a hole in the side just there for the fuse box to go in. Now, we've managed to build a car up with a relative degree of success, but not total success, using that system there. But I must confess it's very, very tight, and it may be we may change it later on. But at this stage now, there is provision to get the heater controls and the fuse box into there, although it is very, very tight. If you just keep an open mind with that, if you feel that it is too tight for you to do, then it may be that you may want to mount them slightly differently. So you can see that also the holes are already pierced in that scuttle top, ready to go on the studs. You can see the copper-plated studs that project out of the body. Those studs go through the holes. You do need to put nuts and bolts into the tunnel. There are no studs there, but they are in the rest of the body. Now, I think we could safely go back to this body that is complete across here, and you could look at that, you can see that the way it's been assembled together. When you do bolt it down, make sure you get it flush like that, and you're looking to put large diameter washers on the inside to pull it down as level as possible. We now come to the wiring loom. This has always been an area that's caused kit builders a lot of problems in the past, and in the past we have used the Ford Sierra wiring loom. Now you can see the wiring loom is here. On my right is the Ford Sierra wiring loom as it's come out of the Daytona vehicle. Admitted, this is one from a gear, so it's got a little bit more on it. And then on my left you see the new specially made Robin Hood wiring loom. Now the wiring loom that you will get from us will be in the exact form that you see it here, with all the wires already marked with a label, and on the label it said exactly where it goes. So it's quite clear, and you really can't go wrong. Now, having said that, the wiring loom is still quite a difficult item to fit, and it does need a lot of concentration and a lot of thought. Now, to be truthful with you, at this stage now, we've only just had this wiring loom. It's just come through this morning, so even itself, we haven't done a lot of work on it. But definitely, you will find it easier to fit than the old loom. Now, what happens is that you must place it in the car, and it will go in the car in quite an obvious position. At this stage now, I can't tell you exactly how it goes, but if you lay it out on your Robin Hood, you'll see that it's straightforward, and it will go in, and all the terminals should reach all the points quite easily. With the loom, you will get this bag of connections. So these are a bag of ordinary crimp connections. To return now to the original loom, there are things on the original loom that we need. And the main thing we need is the fuse box, which is there. It's quite a good fuse box. It's quite a well-made fuse box, and it's straightforward. So basically, all you do is you cut through that canch of wires just there, and then you systematically go through each wire and bare each wire, ready to connect it on to the new loom where it's got the multi-plug connections on it. Now, there is there is the fuse box that has to be swapped, and also there is a few multi-plug connections that are common only to Ford. These are the same, so you must do the same with that, and there is adequate connections to connect it up. Now, I've spoken this morning to the wiring loom manufacturer, and he's reassured me of a point which I was conscious of before, and basically that we've taken a lot of wiring looms from Ford Sierras now, and they are different from each vehicle, and some have got a frightening amount of wires in them, in the way of engine management systems, and also light failure devices, which there are lots and lots of wires to. But basically, I'm told now that each wiring loom starts off as a very basic loom, as the loom that there is in the basic base Sierra 1600, the one that reps used to drive round in. So we start off with a very, very simple loom, and this loom has actually got all the main wires as standard colours. So the standard colours are in our loom. So whatever the standard colours are, whatever colours Ford use, say they use a particular colour throughout for the stop lamps or the flasher lamps, then that has been copied in this loom. So all the colours should match up perfectly. So that makes it quite simple. So you will find that Ford have started off with a basic loom, and they've added things to it like refrigeration, electric windows, the various anti-theft devices, the various failure light switches and things like that. So it is important that, unfortunately, I'm asking you to take this loom out of your car and lay it out so you can look at it like this and identify the various parts on it. We have asked you to, in the past, to label the loom, and I still think it would be a good idea before you took it out to label it. But you can see now our loom is a vast improvement on the original loom, and fortunately you do get additional written instructions with this loom. So you will get them. It will tell you where all the colours go and the compatibility to the lamps that we supply, the headlamps, the rear lamps, the flasher lamps. So we will tell you exactly which Ford colours go to our part of the loom. Just on another point now, obviously lots of you know this and some of you don't, but with wiring loom failures in cars, they usually revolve around the fact that people have put the loom in the car and they've pulled the loom quite tight round some sharp metal, and if not instantly, after a few miles or a few weeks or even a year or so, it's chafed through and the live wire has gone straight through to earth, causing a problem. So make sure that if it goes through a hole, you put a rubber grommet in the hole. If it goes around some sharp metal, make sure that you protect the edge of the metal with some ordinary snap-on finisher or even a cut piece of hose pipe. For the fastening of the loom down to the body, there's lots of clips on the market you can use, but basically two small holes drilled, top and the bottom where the loom go in the panel, and then you can just put a cable tie through it. But fasten your loom in well. Make sure that it doesn't foul on anything like the drive shafts, the steering shaft or anything like that. So I wish you all the best with the loom. I think you'll agree when you see the two looms that you are off to a good start, and psychologically it should take you forward quite quickly.
We've now moved on to handbrake cable. I've removed the handbrake cable from the rear subframe. It would probably be advisable if you could actually do this before fitting the rear subframe, because it does make the job rather easier. The handbrake cable requires an amount of modification because it's obviously far too long to work properly on the Robin Hood as it is. So we've come up with a way of shortening it. Goggles, just for safety's sake, nice sharp cold chisel, and a block of metal to cut on. Good. So I'm now going to disassemble one side of the handbrake cable, laying out all the components in order so that I don't lose anything and so that I can put it back together properly. Now that I've disassembled one side, I have some washers here that I've modified simply by filing out the centres very slightly. This one has a 10mm internal diameter which I've cut a tangent to, so I've got a 10mm slot. One of these larger ones, feed that around and onto the handbrake adjuster there. I can now start to rebuild this part, and the next margin washer will go onto there. Put that now back on there. Just to remind me of how it came off. And once the cable is fitted to the vehicle, you will use this washer that I've cut open to slot into that groove there. The next stage of fitting the handbrake cable is to position the cable roughly in place as you have here and pull this central yoke through the handbrake hole, where you can then connect this pull rod of the handbrake lever through the pin here, and then obviously bolt the handbrake lever to these two holes. Next job is to connect the side of the cable that you haven't altered, the side that's still intact, connect it back into its shoes. With that done, you can then move around to the other side of the car and making sure that you have backed off the brake adjuster, handbrake adjuster, a little way, taking a 6mm bolt shaft here that I have cut the head off and then drilled out. This makes an ideal replacement nipple. Quite simply now, you will pull this tight, making sure that the handbrake lever is in the off position. Mark your position of the nipple where it corresponds against the connection on the handbrake arm on the shoes. Then, once you have marked the position on there, you can advance this a further couple of millimeters just to make sure you have sufficient tension, and then crimp the nipple. There you go. Making sure, of course, that you're wearing your safety goggles, and simply a matter of sharp blow, perhaps something like one on the back, and then another two, another on the other side, so that the inner cable has to pass through a sort of flattened S shape. There we are, job done. Just to clarify the point about where the actual handbrake runs through and adjusts on, I'm using two holes, one here and one on the opposite side, that the handbrake outer cable would normally run right through. So I'm allowing the outer cable to come to that point, and with the washers that I showed you earlier, now preventing the adjuster from pulling through the hole. And similarly on the other side, the plastic ferrule on the end of the outer is butted up hard against the washer, which is then butted up against the hole made already in the subframe.
Into the handbrake, I've just looked at the previous video and looked at the handbrake, which is detailed quite well. The actual outer cable for the handbrake does need to have a stop on it, and if it wasn't made very clear, the holes that the handbrake cable goes through on the original subframe, it's possible to put the stop there, so the actual handbrake outer cable is stopped on the subframe. Alternatively, you can take the cable further on and use the back seat panel as a stop. So that is the two options that you have. The other thing is that it is important that you use a new handbrake cable. We feel that they are expensive and it is well worth buying a new one. But make sure it is one where the adjuster adjusts up the spiral cable. That will give you endless amounts of adjustment. To go on, it is correct the way we've shown, crimping that cable, crimping the nipple on the end. We did use just an ordinary bolt that we've drawn a hole through the middle of it for the nipple. But unlike the operator on the video, you only want one good sharp blow with a blunt chisel. So it has to be a blunt chisel, and one good bang, get it on a small anvil or on the head of a sledgehammer or something like that. And one good bang with a blunt chisel, that's the way you'll crimp it on. And then obviously with a sharp chisel, you'll chop the end off. Alternatively, if you have got a MIG welding set, then what we do, we actually just use a welding set to burn back the globule on the end of the cable until it comes up to the nipple, and then that fuses together. That's okay. But it is important you do get the cable to the right length. So although it wasn't shown on the video, you do need to put the cable, assemble all the brake and put the cable through the adjuster and pull it up tight so that you've got the cable as tight as possible. So you want the handbrake lever down and you want the adjustment off the cable so you've got the maximum adjustment to go. And then you'll pull the cable very tight, mark it with a white marker, and then you'll take it off, and then on the ground, then you'll put the nipple on. Okay, the handbrake does work really well on the Ford Sierra. You've got a good handbrake that you can grab and you do handbrake turns and all kinds of things with confidence. Remember, when you've carried out this conversion, if you find the power that you've got, the one that breaks everything, the one that comes around the house and breaks all your tools and things like that, get him to sit in the car and really yank the handbrake on so that if it is going to fail, it'll fail on the test when he's doing it.
Here's fitting brake pipes. Will be supplied with 6 lengths of pipe, which will run in order, or from the last cylinder. First one will go across this box section, across the top here, and then down and come through here to the flexi pipe. Second one, the master cylinder, along the box section, and to drop down to come through around about here to the flexi pipe for this wheel. Third one to run once again from the master cylinder along the box section again, along right here. It will drop down underneath to connect with the T-piece around about here, obviously on the inside of this panel. And then another section which runs from this T-piece across to the opposite sight on the other side of the car. And then from these two junctions, you'll then have your flexible brake pipes, which will run from these junctions to the bracket, which is connected to the trailing arm, which is here. And they're then supplied with 2 further pieces of pipe, which are to replace these sections of pipe which are connected to the trailing arm of the Ford Sierra. Obviously I'm going to need to put a few curves and a few bends into them. It's important that you master this skill. Hopefully you can use your 2 thumbs and gently work a bend into the pipe without actually putting a heavy bend into any one point. Because if you do actually bend the pipe too sharply, if you concentrate all bend at one point, you will end up with a kink or even a crack. This one isn't going to crack unless I actually force it to, but you'll then actually get a kink and flatten the pipe to restrict the travel of brake fluid.
Brand new to the Exmo is the new curved bottom rail windscreen. This is particularly attractive and follows the style of the original cars.
The windscreen, however, is still wide and gives you more protection from the elements. The assembly of the windscreen is a straightforward process and can be carried out inside on the dining room table at your ease. The windscreen components consist of a toughened glass, British standard toughened glass, an aluminium frame and the ceiling strip. This is supplemented by a pair of windscreen pillars. The pillars are cut by plasma and need to be either draw filed around the edges or cleaned up with a mini grinder. The holes which are pre-pierced need to be re-drilled and countersunk. I'll start now with the windscreen frame. The windscreen frame is pre-formed, pre-bent, and is of shiny appearance, but it does need to be rubbed down with wet and dry and polished, as you will do with the GRP. Initially, place the frame on the ground and place a toughened glass on top of it. Ensure that the frame follows the glass contour. If it doesn't, then it's quite easily just to tweak the frame by hand to get it spot on. That top rail's all right, and we offer up the bottom rail, and that also follows the contour quite well. The next stage is to place the ceiling strip, the ceiling rubber, inside the frame. With a long piece and a short piece. We'll start with the short piece, and that is pressed inside the frame, like so. And then the top one goes in just the same. Now have the rubber strip inside the windscreen frame. Robert, could you come and just hold this for me, please? If you can get some assistance with this, then it makes it a lot easier. If nothing else, you just get your wife just to hold the frame for you. And help you feed the glass into the corners. So the glass now goes inside the rubber strip. So we slide it down. Right, so we nearly have it in. Okay, thank you. With it nearly in, a bit of a bang, like that. Make sure it's gone right in. Make sure the rubber hasn't got puckered in the corners. Ensure that's gone right into the hole, like that. Peel back the rubber strip, particularly at the corners, making sure it's gone right in. We peel it, just say we see it's more in one side than the other, so we tap it across like that to get it in square. We peel it back like that, and yes, it's in square. The next stage is to get a measuring tape and to make sure it's in equal. So we're measuring from the aluminium top to there 11 1/4, and that one is just over 11 1/4. So we have to just to tap it a little bit more like that, and then we measure it so that's more like it. Now, if you can't quite get it in square, or it's a bit tight to get in, it is acceptable to get a small sash cramp and just sash cramp it up, pull it tight, so that it's in tight. Okay? The next stage is with a roll of parcel tape. And again, with Robert helping us, could you just get the screen upright again, Robert, with a pair of sharp scissors or a Stanley knife like that. The same that end. Okay, good. With the right, Robert, with the two tails cut off, we're holding the screen in an upright position, and we're putting parcel tape round the end of the leg. A bit higher up, a bit higher. That's it. Go on. So hold it there. Don't move. Right, so that firmly pulls the two legs together, but you must leave a gap where my two fingers are just there. The next stage is to get the lower rail without the rubber strip, and we lay it underneath the screen like that. Now, you must line up the aluminium strip with the lower line of the glass, and you must make sure that it runs parallel with the glass bottom. And in so many cases in the Robin Hood, as in so many cases in the Robin Hood, you've got to look at it and make sure it looks cosmetically correct, and that the radiuses in the corner of that lower strip are both equal and both look right, because they must follow the contour of the scuttle. So if we look above it like that and we satisfy ourselves that it is correct, usually the amount of material that sticks out both ends is an indication, and we're happy with that, then we can mark it. Ideally you would use a scriber, but in this case, so you can see it more clearly, I'll use a white marker. Just prior to doing this, we will just check that, again, that the gap between the aluminium is the same both sides, 11 1/4, slightly over 11 1/4, but that'll pull up, so we're talking about that being correct. We're marking in those corners like that with the white marker, there and there. In addition, we'll put a little dot just there and a dot just there, so we know which is the front, which is the back. And now we go up and we cut this precisely in the vise with a hacksaw. Using a piece of cardboard or the like to protect the aluminium, we pop that in the vise and we cut off the surplus material. Cut off the material from the opposite end. With the lower strip now cut to size, we now place the rubber back in the bottom, leaving a small tail at each end. With the top frame, we now trim off the surplus material, pulling it out slightly and cutting it flush with the end. Same the other end. So this now goes on the bottom of the frame. hold it for me. Make sure that you fit it the same side as you started off. So if there is a slight discrepancy in the frame, therefore it will be taken up by the fact that both things are the same. Okay, we now have the lower frame in position. We'll lay it down flat, and with help of a sash cramp, thank you, we'll just make sure that we've got it. If you could hold it upright, the frame, Robert. Lift. Okay. For this exercise, I'm not using any blocks of wood for simplicity, but we're just going to screw it down like this, just to make sure it's pressed in well like that. These toughened screens are quite strong. Remember that you've got a spare one that only costs you £10, so if you break this one, it doesn't matter too much. In fact, if you've got a spare one, then you won't break this one. If you didn't spend the £10, if you spent it in the pub on the way back, pretty definitely you'll need one at some time or another. I think they're going up to £30 soon. Okay, so we've got that glass pressed down well, and we've got that like that. We'll now retape it again together. Make sure you pull the little bits of rubber out that trap in between the joints. There and there. We do need to check it at this stage with your measuring tape to make sure the windscreen is the same distance apart. 11.5. We do need just to cramp that side up a little bit. So we'll just tap it across there like that. It does need to go up a little bit more on this side. We'll just tip it up like that. Lift the windscreen up, that's it, Robert, just like that. So we do need to push this side up more. Let go. Dead on 12. That's spot on. So that's spot on now. We are relying on a self-tapping screw to pull that corner in. In the gap that you see just there, can you get a bit closer? Can you see, David?
Yeah.
You'll see you can see where the glass finishes. If you could pass me the drill, Robert. The drill is just there. We've now got to drill through this corner. A small wooden block as well. That's great. So we drill through this corner. If you could just ensure that you have got a new drill. Right, now the self-tapping screw that's just there in your Phillips driver. The hole I've drilled there does need to be countersunk. This operation now, I won't countersink it for speed, but that does need to be countersunk. And that drill, that screw now goes into that and picks up the frame like that, and you'll see hopefully that it will nicely pull that together. Pulling that frame together, making a nice joint there. Can you see? You can still see the screw that protrudes there. Obviously we countersunk it, would have made a nicer job of it. We now come to the other end. that side is already up quite close. It might be a good idea just to check the measurement again to see what we've got. 10 on 12. Yes, that's great, that's spot on. So again, we can just see the glass glinting through that hole there, that slight gap. Try not to break the glass, remember the 30 pounds now. Bet you wish you bought one on the day at 10 pounds. Through there, another self-tapping screw, thank you. Remember to countersink it, it makes a lot better job of it. It needs to be countersunk so it sits flush with the pillar, and then that then pulls up, goes through that bottom frame and pulls up tightly. That joint now is pulled together. That's it, it's pulled up tight. What happens now is then that we, with the Stanley knife blade, again, we can now remove the parcel tape around the screen. Right, so, remember parcel tape and masking tape, when you've used it, get it off as quick as you can, because if it's on for any more than 24 hours, the residue from the glue settles on the material, and you've done a right job getting it off. So that's taken off now. Again, with a flat surface, we now, with the Stanley knife, we go around the edge and we trim off the excess rubber around the corners and around the sides of the glass. We now need to cut off the surplus material from the bottom legs. Again, with my marker, I'll mark how you have to cut it. If you look at the bottom line along there, you're looking to follow that curve, and I'll draw it freehold, freehand. You need to cut that off, something like that. If you're not certain, cut it a little bit bigger and grind it with a mini grinder. But you're looking to extend those two legs like that, and with a hacksaw, a good hacksaw, you just simply take it across and pop it on the table. Now we've cut off the two tails. When you've got halfway through, turn the screen over and do it from the other side so that you can do it more precisely. That can be finished off with a file or a mini grinder, and the same with the screw that protrudes. That can be cut off, trimmed off with a mini grinder or a file. Windscreen complete now. We now move now towards the car, and we now have to ascertain the position of the windscreen on the car. Now, there isn't a sealing strip for the windscreen. Silicone sealer, black silicone sealer, is used between the scuttle top and the windscreen bottom. This gives you a perfect seal, and it has the appearance of a rubber strip. Holding the windscreen like that, I get a pillar. Now the pillars, you'll see, have been profile cut. They do need to be fettled. The burrs need to be taken off with a mini grinder, and the holes need to be run through with a 6mm drill, and preferably countersunk. But now, if we come round to the side, we can see that the pillars will go on the body. Now, something like that, we just crank that slightly, and we're back to round about what we've always said, about 3 inches from the front of the scuttle, or 3.5 inches, to the part of the triangle is about 3 inches. That is roughly where the pillars will go. So you've got some idea now, and again, to be correct, about 1.5 inches from the seam up there. But to be truthful, providing both the pillars are in the same position, and we get the windscreen so it fills the scuttle, then it doesn't matter too much exactly where the pillars go with regards to being up and down, but right about 1.5 inches from the bottom. If you pop the windscreen down now, Robert, then we can continue with probably one of the more difficult bits on the car, the forming of the windscreen pillars. When you build your second, Robert, it will be a lot easier than the first. We're always told that we ought to form these pillars for people. Obviously, in the future we will be doing, but it would involve buying quite expensive machinery to do this. So we pass on the benefit to yourself, giving you a reasonably priced kit, but you have this to do. To shape them, we're talking about basic, very fundamental processes. With a couple of bits of scrap metal, we turn the pillar on its back, and with an ordinary ball peen hammer, we gently tap the middle of that. Just gently, not too hard. And that starts to form, as you can see, a slight curve in the pillar. So again, on the back one, we press that like that. We tap that down. Now, with it being 3mm thick material, the hammer marks won't come through to the other side. But I'm doing this on the carpet. If you did it on a proper bench, it would be a lot better. So you can see that's quite easily forming that. It is mild steel, it will bend easily. Just to see how we've got on. So yes, you can see that it's started to curve nicely. Just come square on, David. It started to curve nicely. Now, without trying the windscreen on, we can see that we're getting somewhere with these pillars. But at the end of the day, we do know that the face that the windscreen bolts onto, which is this face here, must be parallel to both faces. So we have the scuttle that's tapered, and the pillars are still tapered. These faces do need to be parallel to each other, need to face each other. So what's going to happen now is we must twist these pillars in the centre, just here, across the end of the top of the main triangle. We must put them in the vise and just twist both pillars. So we'll now go to the vise and we'll just twist them. With the right hand pillar in my hand as I took it off the car, like that, I put it in the vise like that. And at the point where the top triangle finishes, I twist it clockwise, like so. Just like that. And then we put the left hand on in the vise, like that, where the triangular finishes, and we twist that in the opposite direction, like so. And then we get the two pillars and we offer them up together like that to make sure there's something like the same, and they are. Put the pillars once more, and we can see now that we're getting somewhere, but there's one more final bend we need to make, and that is directly at the point where the lower triangle finishes. Directly at the point where the pillar changes direction, we need to put a relatively sharp bend in it, parallel with the bend at the bottom. I'll just go back to the vise and do that. We've now more or less finished shaping these pillars, although they may need a little bit more tweaking. They still need to be ground up and cab sunk, but for this exercise we'll now proceed. So we've now got them shaped. You can see that they're curved and they are slightly twisted as well. To make sure they're correct, we offer the two pillars up like that to ensure that they're both the same. Now for this exercise they're almost the same, not quite, but they're pretty close. The tip is with a marker of some description, we'll mark exactly, just hold the windscreen for me, we'll mark exactly halfway along the centre of the ends of the windscreen. Turn it round. This will become obvious to you when you come to do it. Come to fit your screen. So we're marking that halfway along there like that. Screen held in that position that we agreed on earlier on, we now get the pillar, and we're looking for the pillar to sit nicely onto the side like that, and we've decided that it has to be 1.5 inches up from the bottom. Now to be correct, the pillar must be parallel, the bottom of the pillar must be parallel with the bottom of the scuttle, and we're now going to, we spy through these holes to line up the line that is on the inside of the, on the outside of the windscreen frame. We pop that there. Now we're using skinny drill, an 8th drill, and skinny self-tapping screws, and we're going to drill a hole in the body just there. Remember that these screws I'm putting in now are only temporary. These will be substituted with a minimum of 5 or 6 mil nuts and bolts. And that it is quite possible that we will be moving this pillar in order to get it to fit perfectly. And there will be a series of holes which will all be hidden underneath the pillar, right or wrong way. Having fixed that pillar now, that restricts us to the other size, and we're measuring it as exactly 2.5 inches from the front. So the second pillar will fit on the other side at exactly 2.5 inches from the front, again level with the top of the masking tape line. So we're now drilling into the aluminium frame exactly on the line, having marked through it before. Now what happens here is that I've done millions of these, hundreds, and I can drill into that now, knowing that if I go too far and drill into the glass and smash the glass, that I've got a pile of them. What you should do is get a bit of old brake pipe, 3/8 diameter brake pipe, and cut it, put it on there as a restrictor, so when you're drilling into the screen, it doesn't, in actual fact, damage the screen. Using the screws to pull the pillar to the aluminium channel, which is relatively soft. We've got a vice grip which we're clamping the two together to make the job easier. That now is the windscreen in position. You'll see that we have the equal amount of material both sides from the point of the triangle. It's across the front of the scuttle. It's level, you can see by the blue lines. And then the gap underneath, we've got the two corners touching there. For this exercise, we're going to leave the plastic coating on, because in actual fact we will redo this windscreen again. We'll do this just for demonstration now. Remember that you must put some pot rivets on the front of this panel to secure the scuttle to the scuttle top to the firewall. So you will need a few pot rivets along there to secure that, and you do need to Sikaflex from behind. So once you've got the front of that fixed, then you've got the steering column support bar in, and you need to prop up this scuttle panel underneath the windscreen bottom. You see it fits quite flush and quite tight. David, if you go from the inside and just show the little bits of plywood. We then get the masking tape and we put in the masking tape level with the bottom of the screen like that. So as you project down to the bottom of the screen, we put in the masking tape on there like that. Then we're going round the corner of the scuttle like that, again level with the bottom of the screen and level with the pillars. We'll just put one extra strip of masking tape onto the body in case it's slipped with the Sikaflex. And with the Sikaflex and force it with the windscreen, you only get one go at it. If you don't do it successfully, straight away we'll start in the middle, we'll squirt that into that gap. Now using a stiff piece of cardboard, you will press that in level with the bottom of the screen. The next stage is to get the tails from your masking tape and immediately to pull the masking tape off. Now, particularly well, considering it's been rushed, it is successful because there is a limited amount of Sikaflex showing. It isn't a big wide band, it's relatively small, and the actual areas in the corner of the windscreen are very similar on both sides, so it doesn't indicate that something's amiss. Both are very much the same, so that's what you're looking for.
18 hours after we have fitted put in the silicone seal on the windscreen, you'll see that we now have something which is fairly first touch and pretty professional looking finish.
We now come to the GRP components, which are the nose cone, the rear wings and the two front wings. On the Exmo kit, the front swept wings come as standard. The GRP that Robin Hood supplies is top quality. Only the very, very best materials are used. The reason for this is that all GRP is subject to deteriorate in time. The biggest problem being the discoloration of the gel coat finish. 2 layers of gel coat are applied to the moulds when these are manufactured. Therefore, there is plenty of gel coat for you to work. The GRP, when you get it, is trimmed roughly, but you do need to carry out further trimming yourself. There are certain items on the GRP that need to be rectified. There are marks in the mould through wear and tear that is duplicated in the items that you have got. These are easily rectifiable. In addition, there are certain marks on the GRP due to handling and manufacture. All these will be able to be removed by the method which I'll show you. You'll notice on some of the GRP that you'll notice there is white marks around the edges, and probably the edges are a little bit rough, as you can see. This is where the moulds have been repaired with plasticine, and usually a lot of this can be got out. You will also see that the wings that you have got, the rear wings that you've got, are of the type that was fitted to the Robin Hood prior to the Exmo, and there is an area that needs to be trimmed off it. So I'll use these yellow wings, they're easier for me to demonstrate with. And I'll start off with the nose cone. You can see it's been trimmed roughly, but it still has the area in the centre of the grill that has to be trimmed off. There is a suggestion where this needs to be trimmed, and there is a recess in the corner which you'll trim off too. So around there you can see that is the area that you need to trim off too. You will notice that directly in the centre of the nose cone there is a suggestion where the badge goes. So look for that, and you'll see there's a raised circle in the centre, like that. That is where the badge goes. It's best to cut the centre out using a hacksaw blade or a pad saw. A jigsaw for the centre tends to be a little bit coarse. If you start off by drilling a couple of 1/4-inch holes like that, elongating them and putting your blade in, your ordinary 24-tooth hacksaw blade, and start cutting into that corner, twisting the blade when you come to the corners, then you'll see that it's quite easy to cut. 5 minutes you'll have the centre cut out. When we come to the rear wings, there are 2 areas that need to be trimmed from the rear wings. Both rear wings are slightly different, and you have to manipulate them a little bit to get them to fit correctly, but they will fit. You'll see that there already is a mark on top of the wing where you need to trim to. So very roughly, that is, it comes at the back quite wide, and then it's around about 1 inch from the edge of the wing. So 1 inch from the edge of the wing. Use masking tape to mark this. It's a lot better than doing it freehand like this. Use masking tape and trim this off back to this line, which I've marked on here like that. So all that area there, you're cutting off with a hacksaw blade, a pad saw, or if you're brave, with a fine-tooth jigsaw. So you're cutting that away. As we come to the front of the wing just here, then because we've altered the body, then you don't need this part of the wing. So right into that corner just there, as I've drawn there, and then diagonally across like that, you'll trim all this area off. That will be thrown away altogether. The front wings, apart from going along the edges, have you got any masking tape, Robert?
Someone's by the chair.
Okay, the front wings, it's usually best to fit these, to put them on first if you're going to trim the edges. So you will be, once the wing is on the car, then you'll get some masking tape like that. And with a nice straight line, you know, around about 1/4 inch off the wing along there. Pull the masking tape tight like that. Just hold the wing for me, Robert. The rough edge, you'll incorporate it 1/4 inch, 3/8, 1/2 inch. Take all the roughness off, and then that can be trimmed back to that. If you was in a hurry, you'd do it with a jigsaw. If you wasn't in a hurry, then you get some sandpaper and a sanding block, and you sand it off carefully to give you a nice straight edge just there. We're at the wings now, and if you look closely, you will see that there are various surface imperfections in them. Lots of the marks are made from manufacture, the faults in the mould. Other areas are possibly small scratches that have been due to manufacture or through transit. Now these are quite easy to get out, and although some may seem quite deep, they can be sanded out. The other marks that look a little bit frightening are the star cracks. These are star cracks in the mould, and as you probably appreciate, these cracks are cracks upwards, so they will sand off quite easily. Remember that we've got 2 applications of gel coat here, so it's quite thick, the gel coat. Now, I'm going now to just give you a demonstration now. I'm equipped with a rubbing down block, which is a rubber block, available at all accessory shops and do-it-yourself stores. Use a rubber one, that's best. And then you've got wet and dry in the kit, which is, we have here 1200 grit, 800 grit, and 400 grit. So make sure that you're using the coarse sandpaper first, and you're working your way towards a finer grade to finish off with. We have a nose cone here, a green one, that's straight from the mould, and we look at it and we find that there are three main areas of imperfections. One, you can see there is a star crack just there. There is a star crack just there. There is a rough area at the side there, that's where the part of the mould has been broken away. And then at the front, there is what appears to be mat showing through, but is only a copy of the mat that is in the mould that's exposed there. Now we'll go on now to show you how all those areas can be rectified by just flattening them down and polishing them. In addition, we'll imagine that you've dropped it on the way back and you've got a bad scratch that goes across the nose cone like that you've got to get out. So using wet and dry paper, I'm just going to attack those areas. I'm starting off with the 400 grit paper. You'll see these rubber blocks. They've got little spikes on for you to trap the paper behind. Forget them, only unprofessional people use those. If you're professional, you just get the quarter sheet and just fold it around the block like that. So we start off with the bad scratch, and we get the 400 grit paper, and we go down and we flat that out, going down the scratch. We then move to the star crack, which is at the side. And that is coming out equally as easy. Bit at the side, and very carefully we start flattening that down. But remember, it is something that's sticking up out of your component, and therefore it should be easy to flat out. On these edges, people often put a finishing strip on the edges to finish them off, but usually it's possible to get these areas out. If you're uncertain just how much you can flat down these little bits and pieces, then in the area of the nose cone that you're going to cut away, then you could experiment with that. Okay, we now move on to the little bit at the front. That looks a bit frightening, where it looks as though the mat is exposed, but it is in fact in the mould. So we'll carefully rub that. And as I rub, I can see it is disappearing. Now remember, this is 400 grit paper. And you should restrict the amount that you rub with this to the minimum. It's off now, and you can see that these areas now have dried flat, and it's quite clear to see where you've been, where you've rubbed down, and where you must carry on from. Now we move on to the middle grade of paper, which is 800 grit, and we're now going to flat down an area that is in actual fact wider than the areas that we've already flattered down. So we look now, and if we just draw around them, it's in order to draw around them, we're going to flat down an area like that with a finer paper. Like that, and like that. Now we look at it closely again, and we can see that there's a little bit of an abrasion at the front there. There's a few little white dots there, and some quite bad scratches like that. So in addition to the areas, the main areas, we're also going to flat down with 800 grit paper. It may be 600, but with 800 we have now. We're going to flat those areas down as well. Now, with 800 grit paper, you really can rub quite freely. You would have to rub quite a lot before you rub through the gel coat. So you're going to flat this down now with the 800 to get these other marks out. And it's a good idea to draw around it as I've done with the felt tip pen, and you can see exactly where you've got to rub, because once you have rubbed and wet it, it's difficult to see the actual imperfections. Remember, just as we're rubbing this down, that without any doubt, one of the faults with GRP is that it does fade in the sun. I guarantee it'll fade. Red is the worst, dark blue is not very clever, maroon's even worse, yellow is not very bright, but green is a good colour. If your GRP does fade, you can revive it by flattening off the dead surface, as I'm doing now, and repolishing it. I've nearly finished the 800 now, and I'm now going to wipe it dry again. You now see that that's the 800 grit finish now. The same thing now applies to the 1200 grit. On this video now, I'm not going to show that being done, but basically we go over that now with the 1200 grit, again making that bigger as we go. And you'll probably appreciate that while we're at it now, it may be just as well with the 1200 grit to go over the whole lot and flat down the whole lot with 1200 grit. But for this video now, I shall do this in the next 3 or 4 minutes, and then we'll come back before we start polishing. We've now completed the flatting down with the 1200 grit paper. Ideally, the whole of the area will be flattened down. But as you can see, we've flattened down the areas of the repairs, and it leaves half of it to be polished. Now, we have a professional polishing machine here that is a low-speed sander type of thing, but lots of you have got electric Black & Decker drills with polishing mops on them, Lambswool phonics. That is adequate to use that. Alternatively, if there's only a relatively small area, you could do it by hand. I'm using rubbing compound, either fine, medium or rough grade. We've got medium grade here, but you could use T-cut or Brasso. All of it works well. You could do the work that we've done in the last half an hour inside your home. You could do it on the dining room table, in fact, if you really wanted to. But when you come to do this polishing with a machine, then you've really got to do it outside in the open, because it does splatter. It does go all over the place. So this is why you see me, I'm wearing my overalls now, and removed things away. So the amount of T-cut I put on here, the amount of rubbing compound I put on here is about right. If you put more on than that, then it will splatter and make a mess. So with the machine, polish machine with a foam mop on it, we spread it out like that. And we now start polishing. Okay, that's the polishing, machine polishing just about finished. So we go over it now with a soft cloth, and you look at the result. Now, as we see, it is quite successful that we've got all the marks out, the mark at the front that appears with the mat showing through. That came out a little bit on that corner. And of course the main one, that scratch, that's come out 100% spot on. The only little bit that's not altogether perfect is the bit at the side. If you look at that, we've got most of those marks out, but just on that very edge, just there's a little bit of mark that wouldn't come out. So what we would normally do with that, we would actually trim that edge off, or you could put on a snap-on finisher on that edge. But it is minor, it would be in order just to leave it. As you can see, it is possible to get the GRP to a very, very high grade quite easily and quite simply. We're now coming to fit the rear wings. Just to recap, we're trimming these down, removing the top material so it's 1 inch wide, and cutting away that now redundant fixing point that is used on other Robin Hoods. So we're trimming that down. I can move across to a wing that we've already worked on. This is a wing that's been trimmed down. You'll see we've reduced that top edge, left it wider at the back, and cut away that area just here. On the bodywork, in the form that you get it, David, come around here, you can see that there is 4 fixing holes already pierced. One, two, three, 4. If you get your wing and you offer it up to the side of the body like that, make sure that it's flush with the back, and then drill, mark it from the inside with a felt tip pen and drill those 4 holes. You can then bolt the wing on to the side of the body, so it goes on the side like that. Marked and drilled the 4 holes, we're now ready to fit the wing to the body. In this particular car we're using here for an example, we've already fitted the rollover bar, and we've actually already fitted the luggage compartment side infill panels. These are intended to be fitted after you've fitted the wings. It must be flush with the back of the car. It must fit equally with regard to the top and the bottom. We come now to fix the front, and you'll see that we've trimmed this area away around where the stone guard fits. And the wing now is flexible, it can be moved. The aim of the exercise fitting the rear wings is when the wing is in position that the gap, you put square on David, the gap between the wheel, the tyre just there and there is equal. It is possible to manoeuvre the wing around to get it to fit better or worse. So in this particular instance, we have already tried this. We've drilled a hole in the position that it's most best suited. So you can see that with using the 6mm bolt, in this case we're going to put it up from underneath for simplicity. We've got a little bit of force to get the wing on, but we've now got it on just there. Like so. And you can see that we've got a good gap, front and rear, about the same. Having said that, if you haven't got a very good gap, then there's several things you can do. You can see that the wing is a little bit flexible, and you can move it around a little bit to get it to fit. In addition, at the end of the day, if you really had got a problem, then it is possible to undo the bolts that hold the rear end of the car on, and you can move the whole rear end backward and forward to get this gap correct. Another thing that has to be taken into consideration when fitting these rear wings is that you must have the wheels on, preferably the wheels that you're going to use on the final car, because because with a straight edge along the wing like that, you want an equal amount of gap between the tyre and the wing, just there. Obviously you can move this end of the wing in or out, depending on what size wheels you've got. You can see that as I pull this out, it does close the gap just there, so it would mean you have to move the wing further back in the event of a bigger wheel or flatter tyre. But as we've got it here, this is what we term as just about perfect. You can see that you've got a good gap there, 3/4 of an inch front and rear, so it means that you could fit a wheel and tyre that was 3/4 of an inch fatter. But remember, after that you really are looking at possibly having wider wings on the rear of the car. Alternatively, the wheel could, as you see, there's plenty of room at the top. To be critical, you could move the top wheel out. It would be out a little bit further here, which wouldn't be totally acceptable, but would be reasonable. To move on now, David, if you come around here, you can see that although the back of the car is okay and the square-on vision is okay, we've come to a rather untidy part round here. And remember that the Expo is a little bit of a compromise because we have managed to wind the body as wide as possible in order to get the subframe in, and we've had to trim the wing away here. So we've now got to tidy this area up, and this is done by a stone guard. And this is quite clever because it does disguise this particular area and it finishes it making it look quite neat. So the stone guards are pre-cut and pre-folded, and they are all stainless steel, whether you have a mild steel car or a stainless steel car. Now, they're cut a little bit larger than normal, and you do have to still trim them to fit. So you'll see that as you offer that up like that, it comes down and it does cover a larger area than is necessary. Now, it does need a little bit of reworking to make it spot on, so we'll look at it now and we'll decide what we're going to do to it. If you had got a bigger wheel and you was bringing the wing further out, then you would have to look at the stone guard slightly differently, but we're assuming that you're going to use a standard 175 tyres, and we're going to do what we can with this stone guard. Now, first of all, offer it up like that and decide how big you want it. We're spying down from above. I'm going to mark it roughly in the area it wants to be, so we're going straight down there like that, straight down. So we're now going to trim that off using some snips, and remember, it's not a lot of good by any except genuine Gilbos. These are the best and not really expensive. This exercise, it's a good idea to do it, first of all, with some cardboard before you attack the stainless steel. So I'm now going to snip this off. I'm going to round off the corners and trim it roughly to shape. So from your upcut packs, I want you to make up an angle section that goes behind the wing. It's going to be about 10 inches long. It's going to be about 1 inch by inch, and you're going to bend it just over 90. And it's going to go behind there, and you're going to pop rivet 1, 2, 3, 4 pop rivets. Mark them with the pen. 1, 2, 3, 4 pop rivets there, and likewise onto this panel that side. You're going to fix the wing firmly onto that. Now, you'll do it so that this edge there will tuck behind that panel, so it'll go in there like that. It'll tuck behind, and then you will eventually make sure it covers a little cutout at the bottom, and then it'll eventually be bolted through the angle section and through the stone guard and through the side, and you'll bolt it all together so it's fastened firmly to the body. Make sure you get the top corner tucked in there like that and the bottom corner like that. You're relying on the nuts and bolts to pull it up tight. With that firmly in position, You'll then drill it all the way around about 3/8 from the edge, and you'll mark it around about 1.5 inches apart, like that. And you'll pot rivet that to the wing, to pull it in like that. Okay, we'll now proceed with 2 more cosmetic items just while we're on this. 2 things that people do miss off the Robin Hood, and things that I personally would like to see on. So first of all is the beading that we give you to go around the stone guard. Beading. To fit this, make sure it's on a warm day. A contact adhesive round the edge. The stone guard like that. And a little on the beading like that. And then wait 1 minute for it to become tacky. Look at that. And having put it on the back, it's still quite workable. You've then just got to just manoeuvre it so that the correct amount just overlaps. Put some masking tape on it, on the back. And is ready for that to be pot riveted onto the car. We've now completed work on the stone guard. You can see that we have a circumference of pot rivets all the way around about 1/4 inch in from the edge and 1 to 1.25 inches apart. You can see that the stainless steel has trapped the brown strip all the way around it. We've shaped it neatly so it goes from the bottom of the bodywork to the top, and it gives it a distinctive shape which is quite neat. The stone guard has been fastened with 2 6mm bolts to the side panel, pulling it up tight there and making the wing quite rigid and quite strong. A Robin Hood engineer, we see lots of finished Robin Hoods. Sadly, there's very few that we feel that have been built to the very best of the ability of the builder. Often in the case when a builder's got limited resources or limited skills, then we can understand this, but we do feel that by putting all the components on we give you in the kit, it makes it a better car. Rear wing dummy piping is a thing that we see regularly missed off, and we feel that fitted to the car, it does make the car look a lot better. It is intended to complement the front wing piping that goes in between the wing and the body. This goes on the rear wing. So this is a round section, black. It is in fact a cable, and it goes on the back wings to make it look as if the back wings and the back panel are 2 separate panels. Now, it is supplied in a length that's sufficient for the 2 wings. So if you start off by just checking that and cutting it in half. Small hole in the end of the cable with an 8 drill. A hole under the rear of the wing to follow that seam that runs along there. The pot rivet gone on the pot rivet. We now pot rivet the strip to secure it underneath the wing. Like so. Then we bring the strip into the edge of the bodywork like that and pull it tight. It comes down. Can you come around the front, David? It comes down and it continues to act as a dummy strip into the corner between the stone guard and the body. In this case, it has just wedged in nicely into that corner, and we'll just supplement that by a pot rivet. Can you pass me the drill again, please? And get the gun ready for me. Into the corner, into there. Now you'll see that this process is quick, easy, and we think it definitely adds to the appearance of the car. Tape now. The masking tape will hold that nicely into that corner. By pushing it further into the corner, it does help to tighten the strip up and make it look straighter. But don't put masking tape over the centre of the strip. If just here it won't quite go into that corner, it keeps rolling out, then you can just cheat by getting your drill like that and just drilling alongside it one invisible hole and just stick a pot rivet in it temporarily like that, and that'll stop it coming out. Tucks it into the corner, stops it coming out, and then we continue to masking tape it down into position, but again only leaving the masking tape on half the strip. Next thing to do is another strip of masking tape 1/8 of an inch away from the edge of the black beading like that. Now unfortunately you do need a little bit of skill with masking tape to get it straight. But remember, it's crepe material and it is intended to go round corners. If you're not certain, then you could use a narrower tape, a 1/2 inch tape that would go around better. Okay, the next thing to do is to place another piece of masking tape directly on top of the beading. But this time, just a little bit over the centre. The first piece you put on didn't quite go to the centre. This is going just over the centre and possibly a little bit down the back. It's going there all the way along it. Past that rivet that you've cheated and put in there, down there like that, and on top of the first one. Go and seal like this, and you start from the back there, and you put a thin bead of Sikaflex in that corner. Very much the same as when you've done your bathroom tiles at home. You put a bead there into that corner. Be careful not to move away the strip itself. Say, you're then going to run up the corner like that, and you're going to press that in well into the corner like that. And with the finger, we press that well into the gap. We're now are going to take off the last two pieces of masking tape we put on. So remove them carefully. Watch you don't pull them outwards, pull them upwards as I'm doing now. You notice that we're leaving on the initial piece of tape, the tape that is holding into position the actual piping. And that has been pulled off there now, leaving a nice clean edge. Obviously, you've got to do this straight away, because as soon as this sealer starts to cure, then obviously it's too late. Robert, could you just come and hold the piece, just hold that bottom piece down, just there. You've got it. Hold it down. Yes, that's great. And hold the rivet in, try and pull the rivet out. So that is that. Means now we have to wait till tomorrow before we can take off that first strip. Now we've just moved to the back of the car now while we're on the Sikaflex scene, and we're going to remember that you could, if you wished, to put Sikaflex, put the tadpole beading down that seam, or you could Sikaflex it. In this case, we're going to Sikaflex it, for personal preference, or you could put a little chrome strip over the top. It just depends what you want to do. So we've got that, we're incorporating all the bad areas of the GRP, like that, and we're going down there like that. Make sure the two are parallel. Pressing it down well at the edge to stop the sealant actually creeping underneath. And this is a little bit wider than normal, but it will be okay. We're now putting the Sikaflex, squirting it well into the seam. Remember that this silicone sealer is structural. It will help hold the car together, and it will dry to a rubbery effect that you can trim if necessary. So that's got plenty on, adequate on. What we will do, to save getting it over the fingers, we'll take smooth it out using a piece of cardboard to press it well into the gap. Like that. And then straight away we'll take off the tape, and that leaves a neat seam on the back of the car.
18 hours after we put the Sikaflex on, the silicone sealer, we have now removed the tape, and you'll see we have quite a neat job, which is now fairly solid.
The fitting of the front wings, in particular the cycle wings. Now we have a set of cycle wing brackets here, and there are 4 brackets, and they are left and right handed. Like that, like that. Now make sure that they are handed and you have got a full set. Now basically the wing brackets, they will be suitable for either wide or narrow cycle wings. You may just have to tweak that end to adjust them, but that is minor. So we're going to look now at this bracket, which is the near side cycle wing bracket for the lower. So if we just zoom in, cameraman, you'll see how the hole in that bracket actually fits on top of the track control arm. So where the nut is bolted onto the track control arm, that bracket goes on there. So that bolts on there like that. If you come round the back, you can see there is about 1.5 inch gap between the tyre and the wing. The tyre and the bracket just there. And there is about a 3/4 inch gap at the side. Obviously these are a little bit adjustable at this stage, you can move them round. If you come round the front now, we have the front wing bracket, which is fastened through the pinch bolt on the stub axle. So there we see that bracket just there. That isn't drilled, so whatever gap you had at the back, 1.5 inches, you need to ensure that the same gap is just here. So you will have to centre pop and drill that there. Now we have had lots of problems with wing brackets in the past. So on the new brackets that are reduced now, there is an insert inside them. So you can see there is a 3/16 by 1 inch strip inside that bracket now that goes several inches into the bracket just there, that gives it a lot of strength. So these are pre-cranked forward, and that bolts on like that. Make sure that pinch bolt is tight. Just on the subject of that pinch bolt, we did refer to the assembly of the suspension earlier on. What I would say to you is, what I omitted to tell you is that once you've got it together, so you're not relying totally on that pinch bolt, it is a good idea to drill through that casting just there. You see that white dot, straight through that, and straight through the dummy McPherson strut, and you can put a small high tensile 6mm nut and bolt through that, just to give you a little bit of assurance, peace of mind when you're driving along, that that pinch bolt isn't the only thing holding that together. So a nut and bolt through there would be a good idea. To get back to the wing brackets, you'll see then that we have got it bolted on there, and that's pulled up tight. So we've got it there, and I think this just needs to come over a little bit like that, so that you've got about a 3/4 inch gap between the tyre and the wheel, just there. Next we come to fitting the cycle wings. There are two types available, the narrow and the wide. You've got to decide yourself how you want it to look cosmetically, but really I like the narrow ones, which are most suitable for the up to 175 tyres. Now, the actual procedure for the cycle wings fitting is quite straightforward. You must have the brackets on the vehicle, like we've just said, and we've got to make sure there's plenty clearance underneath the bracket, front and back. Depending on how good you want your car to look, or how cosmetically correct, depends on the relationship between the wing and the tyre. So we've got these brackets, the way I feel, are bent correctly. You've got to tweak the brackets around, squash and bend the ends to get them right, and then you've got to offer your wing up. So we want to get the wing on the car as square as possible to the tyre. So we've got that like that, and we can see that it's quite good. It covers the tyre each side like that, and then when we look at the side, we can see, if you just crouch down, cameraman, square on, you can see that there is an equal gap around there like that, that it's about the same front and back, but that's what's got to look correct. It's got to hug the tyre quite closely. Obviously, if you felt you were going to have a lot of mud on your wheels, or you didn't want it to look so good cosmetically, you was more interested in the drive in the car, so you may give it a bit of a wider gap. But for this car, we're going to get it quite close, we're going to fit it like that. So once you've offered it up like that, what happens now is that you get parcel tape or masking tape, and you apply it to the underside of the wing. So we've got the parcel tape. I'll just do the front edge, and starting from the edge just there, we put it on there like that, and fasten it onto the wing, dust on the wing. So there's no reason that you couldn't use masking tape here. So
So we press that down like that. In fact, this isn't really sticking in very well, but for what we're going to do now, we'll do. So we're sticking that onto there like that. So we've got that parcel tape on the outside, inside of the wing. What happens now is that we're going to apply a liberal amount of Sikaflex onto the top of that bracket. So onto the top of that bracket and then onto the back of that bracket there. So we're going to also put parcel tape just there. So what happens now, with a liberal amount of Sikaflex or silicone sealer, put it on the top of there like that, and then, having had this wing on previously, we're going to sit that wing back on there like that. Now you're going to do this job last thing at night, and you're going to make sure that next door's cat doesn't get into your garage and knock this, because you're going to sit that on top of the Sikaflex like that, and then you'll probably get a little bit more parcel tape and put some parcel tape. So again, with the Sikaflex on that, very gently, not to squash it away too much, you put in that wing on there like that, putting the wing on, and then you're going to just tell me to do it tonight. You're doing it last thing tonight, you're going to just stick that wing onto there like that, and then onto the bed of Sikaflex there, so that that wing is stuck on with Sikaflex. Obviously it isn't, because you've got the releasing of the element of the parcel tape. So what it means that when you come to the car the next day, you'll take the wing off, and you'll have found that the wing is sitting nicely on a bed of Sikaflex. So when you do take the wing off the next day like that, you'll pull it off, and you'll see the contour on top of that bracket. You could leave it more than a day, in fact, if there was a thick bed. The contour on top of that bracket resembles the underneath of the wing. So it means the wings are semi-rubber mounted, and they're fastened on onto a bed of Sikaflex like that. And you can still take the wing off for maintenance and take the wing off if you want to replace the wing. So once you've lifted the wing off, what happens then is that through the Sikaflex and through the wing bracket, you're going to drill 2 holes. 1, 2. So you drill the 2 holes like that, and then you put the wing back on again. It'll go back spot on in the position it was before, because it's already moulded to it. It'll have nooks and crannies to sit into. It sits on like that, and then you'll obviously take the wheel off, jack the car up, and then project through those holes and drill from underneath with an 1/8 drill only, through there, and then you obviously drill through the top with a 6mm bolt hole, and then you'll put 4, 2 in each, 2 in the top, 2 in the bottom roofing bolts to securely hold the wing on. And that's the wing held on then with the roofing bolts. That's pretty straightforward, okay? Remember to drill through from underneath with an 1/8 drill, and then through the top with a 1/4 drill, and then that means that the wing won't splinter. You will find that these wings, although they've been semi-trimmed, you will have to go over them and trim them up. There is ample material on the edges to sand back to. That's quite straightforward. Okay, I'm now going to come to the fitting of the swept wings, if you've got swept wings. And again, that's pretty straightforward, not that difficult. We're going to look across here at the swept wings. So we have a straightforward swept wing just there, and then we've got the bracketry, the front wing bracket, and the rear wing, the rear of the front wing bracket. So we start off with the front wing bracket, and we can see, if we look at this kit just here, that this bracket will actually go onto the side of the body just there. So you're taking that nut off there, and that's going onto the side, through that hole just there. You can see my little finger poking through the hole. It'll go through there and bolt onto the original, with the original nut and spindle. Obviously that needs supplementing with 2 or 3 more bolts to hold that on firmly. So that gives you the wing bracket on there. Obviously you're going to prime it and paint it first, and then with the wing bracket onto the side of the car, we're taking a measurement. The measurement we need now is a pretty universal measurement, and I'll give you the measurement now. We'll offer the wing up, we'll do it backwards way around. So we're going to offer this wing up. So the most important thing when fitting these wings, and this doesn't just apply to the Robin Hood, it applies to all cars like this. There was a man who decided how these wings should be, and he laid down the exact position of these wings, and we've all copied him over the years. So what is important, if we take a line, cameraman, can you come round the side? If we take a line and we project this line straight up from the front of the wheel, that is where the front edge of the wing should finish, rightly or wrongly. I mean, I would be the first to admit that it doesn't give much protection to the poor animals you might hit at the side of the road, but unfortunately that's it. So we're looking now to project up from the front of that wheel there to the front of the wing, and that is where the wing should be. So if we go on then, and we actually look on the side of the body, that means that from the back of the front cross member, we're looking at a measurement that's something like 5 inches on this particular car, 5 inches from the front of there to the start of the wing. So as we go on then, we're now going to fit this wing, and you're going to start from the top of the body to come down about 1 inch, and that is where the wing will start. So we bolt it on first of all to the body just there, so there's 1 inch gap, and then the rear of it, this end, is exactly, it fits halfway down there. So that panel's 14 inches, so that fits halfway down there. And obviously you do have the front wing bracket that is sticking out at the front. So that's sticking out through there, that's coming back there, and I'll just get the bracket and just show you. In fact, our operator has given us the wrong bracket as usual. That's Carl for us. I've asked him for the bracket the same size as the wing, but for this exercise it will do. He has given us a near side bracket, so we want an offside bracket, typical of Carl. Not very bright, Carl, he admits it himself. So this picture of Carl quickly.
I asked his dad.
All right, don't worry.
I asked his dad. I said,
Right,
which one?
so that goes on there like that, if you see. So that means that that then is then going to fit that means your wing is going to fit just there. And if you want to, you can slightly bend this bracket to give you a different height between the wheel and the tyre. But you want approximately about a clenched fist between the top of the wheel and the wing. Because remember that this, unlike the cycle wings, the swept wings go up and down. So if you've got that bolt in, you can easily just adjust this bracket. You may need just to squash that just there. We'll just come along to the back bracket. Now please don't forget to fit this, because it is quite an important bracket, and we ourselves are guilty of not fitting this bracket. So if we come along, we see we've got a bracket just here, which is made from 3/4 box, and it's cranked. If we just look at the Exmo, we can see where that goes, cameraman. It goes under the wing just there. Can you just, underneath the wing there, and it gives the wing a lot of support there, so that in the event of an accident or an event of somebody wanting to sit on the wing to take photographs, as people do, that means that there's some strength there. But people always comment that, unlike other cars of this type, particularly those made of fiberglass, that our wings don't flap about as theirs do. Just one final point, you will see that in the kit, if you've bought long wings, which are extra, cameraman just up here, there is some tadpole beading that goes between the wing and the body. Remember, when fitting these bonnet catchers, to make sure that you don't fit the bonnet catch too far down there, otherwise it'll interfere with the wing. And remember to fit the bonnet catchers before you fit the wing, because you won't get in to drill those holes. Once that you've got that front wing bracket on, then you'll use the same process for fitting the swept wings as the cycle wings with regards to the bed of Sikaflex, and then drilling up from underneath and putting a roofing bolt through the top like that. Again, once you've got the wing in position, just hold it just there. Masking tape. You've got it, Carl. With regards to the wing, once you've got it in position just here, if you get a roll of masking tape, then what we'd like to see you do is put the masking tape on the edge of the wing like that, and get a nice straight line like that down the wing. Do this with the wings on, a nice straight line to take all the imperfections from the edge of the wing there, and get your sanding block and sand that so it's nice and straight. And that can actually go round the front of the wing, round there, to get it straight and tidy it up round the edges. And the same with the edge of the nose cone, that probably needs just sanding a little bit as well. This is quite a straightforward process. First of all, you may decide you want to cut the centre out, as I've indicated earlier on, but don't do that until you've got your radiator grill and you've marked the position with the radiator grill. So if you get your radiator grill, this is what we've painted black already, and you'll see there's 4 legs that's bent inwards. You've got to offer that up where it's going to go on the nose cone. So what happens with that is that you'll take your sealer gun and you'll put a little bit of black sealer on the end of each leg. Not a lot. Just a little bit on the end of each leg. You could use black paint. Could use white paint. So with that, like that, very, very carefully, you're going to press that as square on as you can onto the front of the nose cone, like so. Press on, lift off, and that gives you the 4 marks. So you'll drill through those with a 1/8 drill or a 3mm drill, and you'll find that if you drill very carefully, that you'll find then you can just press those 4 legs into the nose cone, and that is all you'll need to fix it, believe it or believe it not. That's quite a tight fit, and that is quite sufficient to hold the nose cone in. But the point I'm making is that once you've got those holes drilled, then you can mark where you want to cut. So there is a natural recess all the way around there, like that, in the corners, that you'll get your hacksaw blade in. I've detailed earlier on about cutting that. You drill a couple of pilot holes and you put your hacksaw blade into that slot, and you start cutting very carefully into the corner, and then as you get to the corners you just twist the blade in your hand, and that gives you, that's about the maximum radius you can cut with an ordinary hacksaw